All right, guys, so I'm going to walk you through our parent functions one more time, and then one graph with a vertical shift and a vertical stretch, which we called a new amplitude and midline last time. Couple ways to graph these. The first is just to know all of your key points from our parent function. So for sine, these are our key points. All right, and I'm going to graph these on here. These graphs have a little scale for our y-axis, so it's going to look pretty small, but we've got 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi 0, 3 pi over 2, negative 1, and 2 pi 0. So you can just graph through there. You can graph a couple more points if you want. Some people like to fill up the whole graph. Otherwise, once you have one full curve, we call it one full cycle, one full period, you can just put arrows on the end and call it good. But I want to make sure you have your key points. You can either write them right on your graph or above or below the graph. So that's our sine function. For cosine, these are the points. Almost identical graph, it just starts at, let me use our pen, 0, 1 instead of 0, 0. But all of my x values are the same. And our y's just kind of switch. So we have 5 key points for both graph, and then my cosine again starts at the top of the mountain, goes to the midline, bottom of the mountain, midline, back to the top, and that guy's too high. And again, if you want to keep your pattern going a little bit, you can, but as long as you have 5 key points, you're good. All right, so when we're graphing a new function, remember what changes. Now, if there's a number added on the end, this is the new midline. So I actually like to go to the graph, and at y equals 1, I like to put a dotted line so I know that's my new middle of my wave. The number out front, we call the amplitude, or that's the height from the midline to the top. So 2 ways you could do this. You could just go right to the graph, and I know this is a sine curve, so it's usually going to start at 0, 0. But now, one way to do it is you could actually apply your changes to the points. So this is going to be 4 times the y. This is going to be plus 1 for our y. No changes to the x. We're not doing any x changes yet. So my new point's actually going to be 0, 1, and that's right on the midline that I have. Once you know that, my next point, I would go over to pi over 2, and I'd usually go like up 1 if that's my normal amplitude, but now I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4 above the midline. Then I'm going to keep the pattern going. I'll go back to my midline to complete like this mountain. Then I got to do the valley. So I'm going 4 below. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's the bottom of my valley. And then we got to go back to the midline. So one way is just to kind of like apply those changes. I just thought about our original sine curve and did the changes here. Or take all the parent points. So I'll write them out again. And you're going to apply this change to all the y's. So if I do that, all my points should match up. We should have pi over 2, and I do this guy. 4y would be 4, plus 1 is 5, and that's where my point is on the graph right there. So we're great. And I can do this to all these. So this would be at pi 1, 3 pi over 2. We would do negative 1 times 4 plus 1. So that would be negative 3, which is where I have it on my graph already, right down there. And then 2 pi just turns into 1. And those are all those points I have on my graph there, all set. Again, to keep the pattern going, I'm doing every pi over 2 units, and I would just go up or down the proper amplitude, mix between going back to our midline. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you want to do a little extra, but you just need at least 5 points on your graph. All right, so those are some examples for you. You guys can try out those last 3 and they are graded. Make sure you write out your points somewhere, make it nice and neat, and hopefully we'll be all set.